Hello guys, in this video we will be going to see how we can host an Flask application on AWS Fargate. Okay, so if you don't know what is AWS Fargate, let's understand that in just I think 1 minute. So AWS Fargate is basically a service provided by the AWS that allows you to run container on a serverless platform without managing underlying infrastructure. Okay, so it is just like that you have a Docker image and you wanted to run it on the AWS. You will ask AWS to run it on your behalf and just let AWS know how much CPU and how much memory you want, and then all those things will be taken care by the AWS itself. Okay, so sometimes people will ask, like, why would someone use AWS Fargate in comparison to the AWS Lambda? What are the advantages? So the first issue with the AWS Lambda is like it has some sort of a like cold start, and that is not really good for a production based application from the user experience. So in that scenario, people use AWS Fargate. Second would be let us suppose you have an task that takes more than 15 minutes and AWS Lambda has a limit of 15 minutes only. In that scenario, you will use the AWS Fargate. Apart from this, like AWS Fargate also provides some of the very nice networking and scaling features out of the box, and so in that scenarios people also use the AWS Fargate. Okay, so let's see how we can deploy the application. Okay, so in this like video I will be using the EC2 machine as my development machine, so that you can, if you want, you can follow it on your local machine, and if you want you can create your EC2 machine. The problem is I don't have the admin rights to install the Docker on my laptop, so that's the reason I am using this EC2 machine. Okay, so I will just connect it to this EC2 machine. I am here, and then after I will just going to ls it. Okay, so I am assuming here I have already installed the Docker, and if you don't have the Docker running on your machine, what you can do, you can follow this video, follow this blog provided by the DigitalOcean, how to install and use the Docker on Ubuntu. And if it is Windows, you can search it on Google. Like there are many number of blogs, right, available out of the box. So it is just installing the Docker and follow the commands. It is really very straightforward. You just need to copy it and paste it on your machine. Okay, and after that, just last command is this, in which it is kind of checking the status, and it says the Docker is running, and after that you will be able to use the Docker on your machine. Second, here I have rewritten some code of the Flask application, and here in this, like, I'm just importing the Flask, created an app, then after just have two routes. The one is with /name and /version, and then after just it running it. Okay, so let's quickly test it. So like you can also test it on your local machine and see it says development server is running. Let's copy the public API. If you are on the local host, definitely you can access it, the local host, and then after the port number 8000, then after the /name. Okay, so it says the we got the AWS master chef, the route is version fine, working fine, and then after version it is working fine. Okay, so let's close this one now, we don't need this. So let's stop this. Now the next step is we wanted to create a Docker image for this Flask application. Okay, so let's see how we can create the Docker image. For creating Docker image, we need two things. The first one is requirement file, which contain all the libraries that you are using in this program or in this application. Okay, so for creating that kind of file, we have a command from the pip freeze, and write all the requirements which I am using in the requirement.txt file. Okay, so I will paste it and just enter it, and it's then after I will ls it and see requirement file has been created. And if I open it, so is that it has Blinker, Click, Flask, GUnicorn. So like it is basically used by the Flask only. You just need to run this command, and it will handle all the it will write all the libraries you are using in your code to this requirement.txt file. Okay, so the next thing is now the Docker file. Okay, so what is that Docker file? So basically Docker file tells how you want to run your application. Okay, so I will show you the Docker file I have written here. So here is the Docker file, right? So this in this, sorry, my bad, this is up to here only. Okay, so the first step is we are kind of importing Python 3.8 Slim Buster. Okay, so that is if you wanted to run some Flask app code, right? Obviously, you need first step is you need the Python. And how would you like manage the Python? You just need to write this line, okay, and then Python will be available for you. Second is you are kind of like in the Ubuntu we have CD, and here I am using the work directory. Okay, so kind of we are going into the Python Docker sort of directory. Okay, then after I am copying the requirement.file. So requirement.txt is basically that is here in this folder. Okay, so it is copying requirement file to the Python Docker directory. Then after it is running pip3 install -r requirement.txt. So all the libraries that you need is written inside the requirement, and it is installing that, right? Copy dot basically means any file we have here, it copy those all the files inside the Docker image. So obviously the reason is we need app.py, we need requirement.txt. So that's the reason it will copy it. So although I am in like the home or directory, I will suggest you to create a new directory and then after follow the same things. Okay, but that's not an issue for now. So it will basically copy this app.py and all those files, and if you have any other files as well. Then after it is kind of, if you see here inside the app.py file, we are running it using the app.run host port, right? So how would you tell Docker how Docker would know you want to run it, right? So basically we are providing it the command. So Python, obviously we know it. Then after -m, then after Flask run and host is 0.0.0. Basically it is kind of allowed you to bind the public IP of the machine with the Flask app. So anytime you access the public IP of your machine, you would be able to access your Flask application as well. So this is the Docker image. Let's quickly copy this, and then after you just need to create a Docker file. Okay, and I will paste all the contents, and then after I will just save it. Okay. So now we have all the important thing. The first one is Docker file, app.py, and third one is requirement.txt. Okay, now let's see how we can create that Docker image. Okay, so for creating this Docker image, you need to run this command. Okay, docker build. Docker we all know. Build is we wanted to build an image. Then after we wanted to tag with the name python docker, and dot is basically the directory we are referring to. Okay, so dot is basically the current directory. So I will copy this and I will paste it here and just enter it. Okay, so it says permission denied. I will switch user as a root and then after again paste it. Okay, so quite possible it will take some time for you. The reason being is you will be doing it for the first time, but as I have done it multiple times, so it would not take much time. Okay, so now if I ls it and then after I will type Docker images, so it says Python Docker. I have an image with tag latest image ID and it is created 18 seconds ago and the size is 158 MB. Okay, so that's the first thing. That's really great. Now we are able to able to create the Docker image. Okay, now the question arises, how I will provide this Docker image to the AWS. Okay, so for this purpose AWS have a service called ECR. Okay, that is Elastic Container Registry. Basically on that you can upload your Docker image. Okay, so what I will do, I will just search for the ECR inside the search tab, and then after you will come to this console and you need to click on create repository. Okay, so we will create the private repository. We don't want it to public, like so that anyone should not be able to access our code, right? So I will type my repo for now, and then after I will just create it. Okay, now we have created the my repo repository, ECR repository. Now question arises, how I will be able to push it to this repository. Obviously I need some sort of credentials, right? So what I will do, I will go on to the IAM. We need to generate some sort of credentials, right? I will go to the users. So here, like I will select my username as only AWS dev. So that's why I am selecting my user. and then after I will go to the security credentials, and then you need to scroll down to the access keys. Okay, and then after you just need to create access keys. Okay, before that, let's first quickly install AWS CLI as well your development machine. Okay, so you wanted to use ECR on your from your development machine, so for that purpose you need AWS CLI. Okay, so how would you install that AWS CLI? For that, it is just a very normal command, sudo apt install AWS CLI, and I will paste it here. So for me it is already installed, but you can just type this command and it will be able to install the AWS CLI. And if you are on the Windows, you just need to Google the AWS CLI install on Windows, and there also it is just a single command, and you will be able to able to install it. Okay, so now I have installed the AWS CLI. Let's quickly create the credentials. Here in the you can select any of the options. Let's select the other for now, and I will create on next. And if you wanted to provide any tag, you can provide this, and after that you got the access keys, right? Here's the access key and here the secret access key, right? So what I will do, I will go again back to my EC2 instance or my local development machine in your, and just type AWS configure. Okay, so by this AWS configure, I am providing the credentials to the to my machine, so that it will be able to connect to the ECR repository. Okay, I will just copy the access key first, then after paste it. Then it is asking for secret key, so I will copy the secret key, and then after I will paste it. Then after it is asking for the region name, so check where are you where you have created your repository. So I have created my repository in the US East 2 region. If you are using any other region, you can provide that name here. Okay, so I will use US-East-2 and just enter it, and then after that, so default output format you can provide just none. Okay, so now we have configured the AWS CLI. Okay, so let's close this, we don't need this now. So now you can click on view push command, and you just need to copy those things. Okay, so the first is like it is kind of retrieving a token for your for pushing, so you just need to paste it, and once you have pasted it will show login succeed. Okay, make sure you don't miss this AWS configuring the CLI credentials, else here you will not be able to log in. Okay, so I will clear it so that it will good visible to you. Then after it is asking for building your Docker image, which we have already built using this command, right? Docker build -tag python docker dot, right? Then as we have done with this command, then after it says after building the build is complete, tag your image so you can push it to the repository. So let's see how we can tag it. Okay, so I will paste it here. Then after it is asking docker tab my repo latest with this tag, right? So here like I will provide my image name kind of, which is python docker, right? And else everything is same. Okay, make sure you change your image name whatever you have provided here at the time of build. Okay, so I will paste it here, and that's done. Then after, let's just copy the fourth command, run the following command to push the image to your newly created AWS repository. So after you have run this command, you will be able to push your image to the AWS. Okay, so kind of it is pushing your image, right? So let's wait for a few seconds. The advantage is I am on EC2 machine, so it has really a good internet speed, and it will not take much time. For you might be possible, depending on the internet bandwidth, it can take time as well. Okay, so it says latest digest, and it is the push has been successfully done. Okay, let's go again back to the ECR and just refresh it. Yeah, so here you can see that we have an image. Okay, and we have an image URL as well, and it says the size of the image and when we have pushed it. So it is September 14 and the time is 2:27, right? You can check that as well. So that's done. Now the next thing would be running this Docker image on the AWS, right? So how we would run that? Question arise. So what we will do, we will go search for the ECS Okay, so Elastic Container Service is basically which allows us to run any container on the AWS. Okay, so here what we will going to do, we will first create a cluster and then after we will create a task. Okay, so just to understand what is task and what is cluster, task is basically anything you wanted to perform. Okay, so for now we wanted to kind of run our Flask application. So for now your task would be Flask app, right? Task name would be Flask app, obviously, right? And to run this task, obviously you need some sort of cluster, some sort of machine, right? So that is cluster. Okay, so let's get started, and I will I will click on create cluster. Okay, so for now I will just name it dev cluster. You can name it as per your convenience. Then after, it is asking for what infrastructure you wanted to use. AWS Fargate, EC2 and external instance using ECS anywhere. Okay, so I want to use the AWS Fargate. The reason being is it is serverless, so I can stop it and run it anytime. Amazon EC2 is like AWS will run EC2 on our behalf. Okay, so people don't use it much. I think maybe people are using it, but for now I think we would just use the AWS Fargate. In Fargate you can provide 0.25 virtual CPUs as well, minimal, right? So that's the advantage. You can choose anything. So I will select the AWS Fargate, and then after I will keep all the configuration as default. Okay, and then after I will create it. Okay, so I think it will take time. So for then after, what we will going to do, we will create a task definition. Task definition is we wanted to run the Flask. Okay, so I will click on this create new task definition, and then after I will click on create new task. So task, it is asking for the task definition family. So what any name you wanted to, so I will choose the Flask app. Let's name it my backend app. Okay, quite possible in future you will have multiple sort of the tasks. So let's name it backend app, and in the launch type again select the AWS Fargate and keep all the configurations default, and like the Linux environment we wanted to use. So we have different Windows server as well, but we will use Linux only. vCPUs, it is asking for what you want to use, so you can use anything as per your requirement. So I will go for the minimal, and then after I will use the 0.5 GB memory, so that the cost would be very minimalistic, right? Then after I will just ignore this task role and task execution role for now. Then after, it is asking for the containers. Okay, so first container I will be running for Flask app, right? Then after, it is asking for the repository URL. So I will go on the ECR page, and then after I will just copy the URI, right? The image that we have pushed, right? We are inside the ECR repository, then after the image, then after URI. Okay, I will copy, my bad, and paste it here. Yeah, that's done. Then after, it is asking for the port. So port we are using 8000. If you remember, let's quickly check that 8000 port we are using, right? So type the port here, and that's done. Then after, it is asking for if you wanted to put any upper limit as well, so you can put your upper limit here, but I will just keep like left it default. And then after, I will keep all the configurations default, and then let's quickly create it. Okay, so it has been successfully created. Okay, so now we have a cluster as well, and now we have a task. Okay, but we haven't run anything as of now. We just defined a task, right? Now what we will do, we will deploy this task. Okay, deploy means basically now we are running this task. So I will select the task, then after we go to the deployment section, and then after I will click on run task. Okay, so in the run task, it is asking for on which cluster you wanted to use. I will use the dev cluster. Then after, it is asking for capacity provider strategy, compute option. So I will use the launch type. Launch type is basically you have selected at the time of configuring this task. So that is AWS Fargate, but if you want, you can use the provider strategy. So that provide two options, Fargate and Fargate Spot. So if you don't know what a Fargate Spot, so that is basically Fargate Spot are again more cost effective service in comparison to the Fargate, but let's not use that for now. We will use launch type as Fargate only. Then after, deploy application type is obviously task, and I will keep all the configuration as default. Then it is asking for how many tasks you wanted to run. So it would be anything, 1000, 1, or for now I will use the one only, as I am on the we are developing only this application. Any configuration you wanted to select in networking task, I will select all those things, default, the default VPC, default subnet. I am not changing anything, and then after I will quickly create it. Okay. So this task has been task launched, and it is kind of in the provisioning stage. Okay, so if you are not able where we have this task, so what you can do, you can go to the cluster, scroll down, and in the task section you will be able to see your task details. Okay, so here we have configurations that we have configured: public IP, private IP, MAC address. Then after we have logs as well here, networking tags if we have defined. So once this task has been started, we will be able to see the logs as well. So see, this is a development server, so we got the logs. Like once we run this here, if you see, like we got my bad, I will quickly activate the virtual environment, and then after f.py. So here it says like the development server is running, so kind of it is printing the same logs as well here only. Okay, this is a development server, do not use it for production, running it on the address, finding it, kind of press Ctrl C to quit, and debugging mode is off. Okay, so obviously Ctrl C would not be work, the reason is you are not inside that container, right? So now our container is running, that's the good thing. I will go again back to the configuration, and we'll see the task status. It is not, I think, updated as of now. The status is running, right? And desired status as well running. So your task is running. So now let's try to access the APIs that we have inside the Flask. Okay, so first you need to come down inside the configuration, just copy the public IP and type inside your tab. Then after, add the port number which you have used, so that is 8000, and then after add the route which we wanted to access. Okay, so I think might be take a few seconds more, I think. Let me quickly check. Yeah, so task is okay, task is provisioning. Let's, I think, wait for few more seconds. I think might be it is still in the refreshing state. Why it is taking time, let's quickly refresh it from here. Let's try to why it is so I have copied the public IP address. Yeah, I'm not sure if I have might be some internet issue, I think. That's the reason I am not able to access. So what I will do, I will quickly refresh it again. I think a few seconds, I think I will be able to connect. Yeah, I am able to connect now. I think, yeah, that's the issue. I think that's a networking issue completely, not the issue with the our Flask application, not anything like that, right? So now we see the task status is running, and if I copy the public IP address and just type it inside the here and use the port as 8000. Not sure I have used the 8000 only. Let's quickly go inside here. Yeah, I am using the 8000 only, right? Oh no, my bad. I think we have used port 5000, right? Not 8000. So that's the issue. /name. Yeah, so now we are able to access the Flask application. I got confused actually. So here inside the code I have used the 8000 port, but inside the Docker file, if you see, we have provided port 5000, right? So we have not provided the port, that basically means the default port kind of, and the default port of the Flask application is 5000. So that's the issue. So but now the great thing is we are able to access this Flask application that has been hosted on the AWS Fargate. And if you are facing an issue, please let me know. But the next issue is here, if you see, it is not secure and it is kind of on the HTTP, right? So people generally not prefer to run their backend application on the HTTP. They wanted to use the HTTPS. So in that scenario, you can attach either a load balancer or an API gateway on top of it. If your production heavy application and there are like many users are coming on your application, you can use the load balancer, but otherwise you can prefer API gateway. And if you wanted to see how we can attach the API gateway, I will provide the link to attach the API gateway with the EC2, and you can just refer the same for this Fargate only. Okay, and yeah, that would be for this video. And if you have any query, comment, you can post it out in the comment section. And if you have any feedback for me,